She fired me for smoking cigarettes. So I made her hire a $300,000 professional team and watched my 45K revenge get her fired.
The ultimate workplace revenge. How I turned getting fired into a six-figure payday. Y'all, let me tell you a story that'll knock your socks clean off. This tale's got everything. Workplace drama, sweet revenge, and a plot twist that make Hollywood writers jealous. My name's Jake Mitchell, and back in 2012, I was just another 20-something trying to make it in the content creation world when nobody even knew what that meant yet. Picture this. Smartphones were still clunky. YouTube was barely paying creators, and most folks thought going viral meant catching the flu. I was fresh out of college with a communications degree that felt about as useful as a chocolate teapot, desperately hunting for any gig that'd pay the bills and maybe, just maybe, kickstart my dream career in video production. That's when I stumbled across a job posting that seemed too good to be true. Riverside State University, a mid-sized college in Ohio, was looking for their very first digital content specialist. The posting was vague as all get out, but it mentioned YouTube, video creation, and building their brand online. For a guy like me who'd been making amateur videos since high school, this felt like winning the lottery. The interview process was smoother than butter on a hot skillet. I met with the Director of Communications, Dr. Patricia Hartwell, a stern woman in her 50s who carried herself like she owned the place. She had that no-nonsense haircut and those reading glasses that she'd peer over when she wanted to make a point. Sitting next to her was my soon-to-be supervisor, Margaret Maggie Thompson, a peppy brunette in her early 40s who smiled so much I wondered if her face hurt. Dr. Hartwell explained that the university was ready to embrace the digital age and wanted to use YouTube to showcase campus life, student achievements, and academic programs. They'd allocated a budget for equipment and were looking for someone creative and self-motivated. Maggie chimed in with enthusiasm that could power a small town, talking about how exciting it was to be pioneers in university marketing. The salary? $2,200 a month. Now I know that sounds like peanuts today, but back then it was enough to cover my studio apartment, ramen noodles, and maybe a beer or two on weekends. More importantly, it was my foot in the door of professional video production. I accepted faster than a cat with its tail on fire. My first day arrived on a crisp September morning. The communications office was tucked away in the basement of the administration building, with fluorescent lights that flickered like they were sending Morse code, and walls painted that particular shade of beige that screams government building. Maggie gave me the grand tour, showing me to my desk a metal contraption that looked like it survived World War II, and my equipment. Oh boy, the equipment. They'd promised professional-grade cameras and editing software. What I got was a Canon camcorder from 2008 that couldn't shoot anything higher than 480p without having a mechanical breakdown, and a desktop computer that wheezed like an old man climbing stairs every time I opened more than 2 programs. The editing software was some knockoff program I'd never heard of that crashed more often than a teenager learning to drive. "Don't worry," Maggie chirped, bouncing on her toes like a caffeinated cheerleader. "We're working on getting better equipment soon. For now, just make do with what we have." That should have been my first red flag, but I was young and optimistic. I figured every job had its challenges, and I was ready to prove myself. On my second day, Maggie called me into her office, a cramped space decorated with motivational posters featuring cats hanging from tree branches. She had a manila folder thick as a phone book sitting on her desk, and when she opened it, my heart nearly stopped. "So, Jake," she said with that perpetual smile, "here are your KPIs for the year." KPI, Key Performance Indicators. Fancy corporate speak for, here's how we'll judge whether you're worth keeping around.
She slid a document across the desk that made my eyes bulge like a cartoon character. 85 videos, 3 to 10 minutes each, 52 weeks, all by myself. Let me break that down for you folks who've never worked in video production. In 2012, creating a single professional quality video was like building a house from scratch. You had to write the script, scout locations, coordinate with whoever was appearing on camera, set up equipment, shoot multiple takes because something always went wrong, compose background music because they were too cheap for royalty-free subscriptions, edit everything together, color correct, audio balance, render, upload, and pray to whatever deity you believed in that YouTube's processing didn't mess up your video quality. For one person to produce 85 videos in a year meant cranking out more than 1.5 videos per week, every single week, with no breaks for holidays, sickness, or sanity. Maggie, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, this seems like a pretty ambitious timeline for a one-man operation. Her smile could have lit up Times Square. Oh, I know it looks like a lot, but I have complete faith in you. Besides, we're more focused on quality than quantity. If the videos are really good, we won't worry too much about hitting that exact number. Those words, quality over quantity, would come back to haunt her in the most beautiful way possible. I should have walked right then and there, but I was young, broke, and stupidly optimistic. I figured if I worked hard enough, I could make it happen. So I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. The first month was actually pretty great. Maggie was supportive, always checking in to see how I was doing, bringing me coffee, and praising my early videos. I was putting in 12-hour days, working weekends, but I was producing content that was getting more views than anything the university had ever posted online. Students were sharing the videos, parents were commenting, and even faculty members who usually avoided anything technological were impressed. I should have known the honeymoon period wouldn't last. The beginning of October marked the end of my brief happiness at Riverside State University. I'd stepped outside for my usual afternoon smoke break. Yeah, I know, nasty habit, but stress makes you do stupid things, when I ran into Sarah Chen from the accounting department. Sarah was one of those genuinely nice people you meet in corporate America, the type who remembers your birthday and always has your back. Jake, she said, looking around nervously like she was about to share state secrets, you might want to keep the smoking thing on the down low around Maggie. I laughed, thinking she was joking. What, she's worried about secondhand smoke in the parking lot? Sarah's expression got serious real quick. No, man, she has this thing about smokers, like a really intense thing. I've seen her campaign to get people fired just for smoking. She thinks it shows lack of self-control and poor decision-making. She told me about Tom Rodriguez from facilities management, who'd been a model employee for 3 years until Maggie found out he smoked. Within 2 months, he was written up for every tiny infraction she could find until they had grounds to terminate him. Then there was Linda Walsh from Student Services, whose smoking habit became the focal point of every performance review until she quit from the stress. She's got this whole crusade going, Sarah explained. Says the university shouldn't employ people who make destructive lifestyle choices. I felt my stomach drop to somewhere around my ankles. But she doesn't know I smoke, right?
Sarah winced. Jake, you've been going outside for breaks every day at the same time, and yesterday I saw her watching you from her office window. Sure enough, when I got back to my desk, things had changed. Maggie's sunshine and rainbows demeanor was replaced by something colder than a Midwest winter. Her smiles became tight-lipped and forced. Her, "How's your day going?" became, "I need those reports by 5 sharp." The nitpicking started immediately. She complained that I smelled like cigarette smoke after my breaks, even though I'd started using hand sanitizer and chewing gum. She wrote me up for being 7 minutes late one morning, conveniently ignoring that I'd stayed until almost midnight the night before finishing a video about the homecoming celebration. She criticized me for not answering my phone during lunch breaks, apparently expecting me to be available 24/7 despite my hourly wage. Every video I produced was subjected to increasingly harsh scrutiny. She'd find problems that weren't there, request changes that contradicted her previous feedback, and generally make my life miserable in that passive-aggressive way that toxic managers have perfected. But I kept working, I kept producing, because despite Maggie's newfound hatred of my existence, my videos were performing incredibly well. The university's YouTube channel had gone from a handful of subscribers to several thousand. Video views were up 400%. Comments were overwhelmingly positive. I was single-handedly building their online presence from nothing. Winter turned to spring, and I was burning myself out trying to meet impossible deadlines while dealing with increasingly hostile management. I was working 6 days a week, averaging more than 60 hours, using my own equipment because theirs was garbage, and somehow still managing to create content that was the envy of other universities in the region. By May, I'd completed 30 videos, 30 really good videos that were getting engagement numbers the university had never seen before. But 30 wasn't 85, and Maggie smelled blood in the water. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. "Jake, can you come to Dr. Hartwell's office? We need to discuss your progress." I knew I was walking into an execution, but I held my head high. I'd done good work under impossible circumstances, and I was prepared to defend myself. Dr. Hartwell's office was exactly what you'd expect from a senior administrator. Dark wood furniture, diplomas covering every wall, and the lingering smell of coffee and stress. She sat behind her massive desk like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence, while Maggie positioned herself in the corner wearing an expression that can only be described as barely contained glee. "Jake," Dr. Hartwell began, her voice carrying the weight of disappointment that administrators use like a weapon, "I have to say I'm quite concerned about your progress this year." I opened my mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. "We're more than halfway through your contract period, and you've completed 30 videos out of your assigned 85. At this rate, you'll finish maybe 50 or 60 by December, which falls far short of expectations." "Dr. Hartwell," I said, trying to keep my voice professional, "I understand the numbers look concerning, but I think we need to consider the quality and impact of the work. These videos have completely transformed the university's online presence. We've got more engagement in 6 months than the previous 3 years combined." Maggie practically snorted. "Engagement doesn't matter if you can't meet basic job requirements." I turned to her, feeling 8 months of frustration boiling over. "Maggie, you specifically told me that quality was more important than quantity. You said if the videos were good, you wouldn't focus on the numbers." Her smile turned predatory. "I said we'd see how things went. And what I see is someone who can't manage their time effectively or meet professional commitments." Dr. Hartwell nodded along like a bobblehead. "Jake, I appreciate your creativity, but we need someone who can deliver results consistently. We've decided to terminate your position effective immediately." The room spun a little. "You're firing me?" "We're ending your contract early," Dr. Hartwell corrected, as if that somehow made it better. "We'll be hiring a professional production company to complete the remaining videos." That's when Maggie delivered the line that would change everything. "We'll find a professional production house to finish your work." Dr. Hartwell gave her a slightly odd look at the emphasis on professional, but nodded in agreement. "Don't worry about the remaining videos, Jake. Maggie will get the job done." And that's when the light bulb went off. See, part of my job has been maintaining a database of local production companies for larger projects that might need multiple crew members. I'd spent hours researching every video production house within a 100-mile radius, collecting contact information, pricing guides, and capability assessments. It was detailed work that nobody else in the office had bothered to learn about. If they were going to use a production company to finish my work, they'd have to use my database. And Maggie, for all her management posturing, didn't know the first thing about video production or the local industry. I walked out of that office with my personal items in a cardboard box and a plan forming in my head that would have made Sun Tzu proud. That night, I sat in my apartment with a beer and my laptop looking at the database I'd built. 53 production companies, complete with contact information, specialties, and pricing estimates. With a few clicks, I systematically changed every phone number, scrambled every email address, and corrupted every piece of contact information. Every company except one. Marcus Williams had been my roommate's buddy in college, a guy with big dreams and bigger ambitions who'd landed a junior director position at Midwest Media Productions, a mid-sized company that specialized in corporate videos. Marcus was talented, but stuck doing small projects while the senior directors handled the big clients. He was hungry for a break, and I was about to give him the opportunity of a lifetime. I called him that Friday evening. "Marcus, buddy, how'd you like to make both of us rich?" I explained the situation, how I'd been fired, how they were going to hire a production company, and how I had inside information about exactly what they were looking for. I had a plan that would get him promoted to full director and net me a finder's fee that would make my firing feel like the best thing that ever happened to me. Marcus was interested but cautious. "Jake, this sounds borderline unethical." "Nothing unethical about it," I assured him. "I'm going to teach you exactly what they want, how they think, and what kind of pitch will win them over. You're going to deliver exactly what they're looking for, they're going to be thrilled with the results, and everyone wins." By Sunday night, we had a plan that would have impressed a military strategist. First, I coached Marcus on the university's brand guidelines, their preferred style, and the themes they like to emphasize. I gave him samples of my best-performing videos and explained why they worked. I shared insider knowledge about Dr. Hartwell's communication style and Maggie's preferences. Second, Marcus spoke with his general manager, Patricia Reynolds, about potentially landing a 6-month contract worth well into 6 figures. When she heard the numbers, her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She immediately agreed to pay me a 15% finder's fee, standard in the industry, and drew up a contract that made everything official. Third, we waited for the call. It came on Tuesday morning. Marcus called me, barely able to contain his excitement. "They reached out. Maggie Thompson from Riverside State University wants us to come in for a pitch meeting Thursday afternoon." Everything was falling into place like dominoes. Thursday arrived, and I spent the morning coaching Marcus one final time. I told him exactly what questions they'd ask, what concerns they'd raise, and how to position his company as the perfect solution to their problem. "Remember," I said, "Maggie's going to be desperate to prove she can handle this after getting me fired. She'll want to show Dr. Hartwell she's got everything under control. Play into that. Make her feel smart and capable." The pitch meeting was apparently a masterpiece. Marcus later told me it was like having the answers to a test beforehand. Every question they asked, he had the perfect response. Every concern they raised, he had an elegant solution. When they described the style they wanted, he nodded knowingly and referenced similar projects his company had completed. Maggie was eating it up. Here was a professional who understood their vision, spoke their language, and seemed to intuitively grasp what Riverside State University was all about. They signed the contract that afternoon. Now here's where the math gets really interesting, folks. Back in 2012, hiring a professional production company wasn't cheap, especially not for 55 high-quality videos over 4 months.
Marcus's company charged between $4,000 and $8,000 per video, depending on complexity. They had specialized crew members for every aspect of production: producers, directors, cinematographers, lighting technicians, sound engineers, editors, and production assistants. What took me a week to accomplish alone, they could knock out in 2 or 3 days with their full crew. The final contract? Just over $300,000 for 55 videos delivered over 4 months. My 15% finder's fee? A cool $45,000. To put that in perspective, I'd made more in 4 months than I would have earned in nearly 2 years at my old job. While I was sitting on a beach in Bali sipping cocktails with little umbrellas, Midwest Media Productions was cranking out videos at a pace that would have killed me. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, the best was yet to come. I was lounging by the pool at my resort in Bali, working on my tan and trying to decide between the fish tacos and the coconut shrimp for lunch when my phone rang. It was Sarah from accounting, the same woman who'd warned me about Maggie's anti-smoking crusade. "Jake, you're not going to believe what just happened here." I sat up in my lounge chair. "Sarah, how'd you get this number?" "I still have your emergency contact info from HR. Listen, all hell has broken loose at the university. Maggie got fired yesterday, and Dr. Hartwell got called into the chancellor's office for what people are calling the meeting from hell."
My poolside mojito suddenly tasted even sweeter. Sarah filled me in on the chaos. Apparently, the video production project had been allocated a budget of roughly $35,000, enough to cover my salary for the year plus some basic equipment upgrades. When the finance department processed the $300,000 payment to Midwest Media Productions, red flags went up faster than the 4th of July. The chancellor, Dr. Robert Sterling, was furious. He'd authorized a modest investment in digital marketing, not a Hollywood-level production budget. When he demanded answers, the truth came tumbling out like water through a broken dam. Maggie had been so desperate to prove she could handle the project after firing me that she'd approved the massive expenditure without running it by Dr. Hartwell or anyone else in administration. She'd apparently convinced herself that delivering spectacular results would justify the cost overrun. She was wrong. Dr. Hartwell, meanwhile, caught heat for not supervising the project more closely. How had her department managed to exceed their allocated budget by nearly 900% without anyone noticing? The chancellor wanted answers, and he wanted them yesterday. "The best part," Sarah continued, "is that everyone's now watching your old videos and comparing them to the new ones. And you know what? Yours were just as good, if not better, than what they're getting from the production company." I nearly choked on my drink. Really? Really? The engagement numbers were higher on your videos, the comments were more positive, and the production values were honestly pretty comparable. People are starting to realize they fired the wrong person. Sarah told me that Maggie had been escorted out of the building the same day, her access cards deactivated, and her personal items boxed up like she was some kind of security risk. Dr. Hartwell had been reassigned to special projects, academic speak for "we're figuring out how to fire you without a lawsuit." Meanwhile, Marcus had parlayed his success at Riverside State University into a promotion to full director at Midwest Media Productions, exactly as we'd planned. He was now handling major clients and making more money than he'd ever dreamed of. Sometimes the best revenge really is success. I finished my vacation in Bali, enrolled in a prestigious film school in Los Angeles using my finder's fee money, and eventually built a successful career in video production. These days, I run my own company with a team of 12 people, and we work with clients who actually value what we do. But here's the thing that really gets me about this whole story. If Maggie had just treated me with basic human decency, if she'd judged me by my work instead of my smoking habit, if she'd recognized the quality of what I was producing, if she'd been reasonable about the workload, none of this would have happened. I would have happily stayed at that job, probably for years. I would have helped build their digital presence, trained additional team members, and grown with the department. Instead, her prejudice and poor management created a situation that cost the university hundreds of thousands of dollars and destroyed her own career. The irony is beautiful when you think about it. Maggie fired me because she thought I couldn't deliver professional results. To prove her point, she hired actual professionals who delivered the exact same results at 10 times the cost. She wanted to show everyone how much better things would be without me, and instead showed everyone how much value I'd been providing. Sometimes karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes it just needs you to get out of the way and let natural consequences play out. But occasionally, just occasionally, karma appreciates a little strategic nudge in the right direction. That's the story of how losing the worst job of my life led to the best thing that ever happened to me. How a toxic manager's prejudice became her own downfall, and how sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead. So the next time someone treats you unfairly at work, remember old Jake's story. Sometimes the door they slam in your face is just redirecting you toward a much better opportunity. And sometimes the people who try to hold you back end up being the architects of their own destruction. Trust me, folks, success really is the sweetest revenge of all.
If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching.